the martial arts instructor who brings the identity that Christ gave you into the vocation?
To me, it's always been about building community with the kids, with the parents, with the families.
Because I sit and visit with the parents. It's unbelievable.
You know, if you're just talking to people that are like you, then you're not going to understand how you can help the people that aren't like you.
The King gave you an identity for a purpose, and the purpose is for the kingdom.
The power of God's word is us.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Art of Suffering podcast with Dog Darnell. Today, we have Todd Newsom, a.k.a. Master Newsom. Todd has been teaching Wiley martial arts for over a year now, and just an incredible human being. He has built a culture that is, in my opinion, very, very rare. Like his gym and the people that come there, the parents, the way he treats the kids, the way he coaches the kids, it's all incredible to me. And on top of this, Todd has an 18-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter that are life goals. If you have kids, these are the types of people you want your kids to turn into. And I'm always paying really close attention to people's fruit. You know what I mean? Like, you can tell me all you want if you're good at something, but if there's no fruit, then it doesn't make any sense. And so I have looked to Todd for advice over the last year, and I feel like we've become friends. He's actually the editor of this podcast, so all the shorts you see, Todd does all of that work, which is awesome. And we are happy to have him today to share lessons learned, failures, and how you got to this point, man. Thanks for coming on.
Well, I appreciate it. You make me sound very appealing.
You are. You are, man. So let's kind of, I know you were in the military, but kind of where'd you grow up, and what did growing up look like for you?
I grew up in Decatur, Alabama, North Alabama. And my parents together was raised in church. My dad didn't go to church with us. He always stayed home for most of my life until I went to college. But they were both very good, moral people. My mom was very into church and very godly, and she directed me spiritually through, all those years. But my dad had a big part of it too, even though he wasn't going to church at the time, because he was wise and moral, and, he just had some things going on, Later, when I went to college, he ended up getting back into church, and he called me and said, after a few years of being back in church, and said, "Hey, the church wants me to take more of a leadership role. How do you feel about that?" I guess worried that I would think he's a hypocrite. And I was excited. And he ended up becoming an elder, and he's one of the most godly, spiritual, church-going people I know now. And that was 30 years ago. But so I grew up. I would say I grew up in a godly home, and I was pretty sheltered as a teenager. I went to a big school, wasn't the most popular, so I wasn't going to all the big parties, so I didn't really get into drinking and stuff. There wasn't really opportunity, so that was like a blessing, I guess, for back then. Then I thought that I wanted to go into ministry, and I sort of went back and forth, with that. And when I graduated high school, I decided, I guess I wanted some adventure. And I joined the Marine Corps Reserves. And, there hadn't been a war going on for 20 years at that point. And then as soon as I graduated from artillery school, everything broke out with Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And I was immediately activated and sent there. And that was an adventure. And I feel like that was a big time of spiritual growth and building my confidence in my faith, I think. When that was over, I went to Faulkner University. A guy came through and said, "Hey, if you want to be a Bible major at Faulkner University," which is a Christian school in Montgomery, Alabama, there's people that are given scholarships, full ride if you're a junior or a senior. Well, I've been going to junior college for a couple of years, so I was going to be a junior. So basically, I had free tuition if I wanted to go be a Bible major at Faulkner. And while I was there, I thought that I was going to go full time into the Marine Corps. I wanted to be an officer. But
Would you have had to have been a chaplain?
no, I was just going to
take anything.
As long as you have a degree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I could have done anything. And, I'm sort of a lapse in time through here for a few years. I'll take the short story out, obviously. But I had gotten involved, in a church. As soon as I graduated from Faulkner, I started working for their admissions department, recruiting students, and got involved in a church and volunteered with their youth group, and made me decide that, that maybe that's what I wanted to do, is become a youth minister. So at this point, I'd been in the Marine Reserve for like 8 years, and then I was offered a job at the church I was volunteering. It was a pretty big church. That was a cool opportunity, but I sort of had to choose. And I love the Marine Corps. I didn't want to get out of the Marine Corps. Some people are like, "God, I can't wait to get out," but I felt like I was doing well there, and I had leadership roles, but I felt like this is what God wanted me to do, and I just enjoyed building relationships and guiding youth. Mm-hmm. So I got out of the Marines and went full time into ministry, and did that for 20 years. In the last few years of ministry, I started Next Gen Martial Arts. I had helped a friend. I'd been doing martial arts. I'd helped a friend with his school, and I had stopped whenever my kids were born. And then when my son Micah was going to, he was old enough to get into their Little Dragons program. I went back and said, "Hey, I'll come back and help. If we want to get Micah involved." He said, "I don't do Little Dragons anymore." He said, I can't. They're difficult." And they are. Little Dragons are difficult. If you don't, you have to have a certain temperament and personality for Little Dragons. So I was like, well, I don't want to do that if Micah can't be involved. So I thought, well, I'll just start my own class. So that's what I did. This May will be 15 years ago.
Man, that's crazy. So he'd have been, what, 3 or 4?
4.
4? Man, that's wild. Micah is, just to segue a little bit, a freaking stud, dude. He really is. I mean,
I'm proud of him.
I would be as well. Like, as far as 18-year-old goes, man, 18-year-olds are idiots. Like, if you take all of them and put them together just as a group of individuals, it's very difficult to be a very smart, put-together 18-year-old. It's hard. There's a lot going on there. And, but this guy teaches the classes. He is now a national champion in 2 divisions, correct? Just a stud, man. Wiley loves that guy and looks up to him. And it's just nice to have that. You meet very few 18-year-olds you want your kid to be around. You know what I mean? So that's a really cool deal.
Appreciate that.
So now, it corrects me if I'm wrong. You got into martial arts like later in life, other than the military. We're talking.
Well, I started when I was 16.
Okay.
And did it for just a little bit. I think I got my yellow belt, which is the first belt that you get. A friend of mine that I went to high school with, his dad owned a karate studio there in Decatur, and his name was Jimmy Webster, and I graduated with his son Jamie Webster, who now runs it, and he's an 8th degree black belt, so we're the same age, and I knew Jamie, and he was a black belt even back then, and so I thought, well, if I'm going to try it, that's where I want to go, so I did that. I think, honestly, I probably made a bad grade on my report card or something, and my parents said, yeah, that's got to go, you got to study more, and then, so that was like maybe my junior year or so of high school, and then when I got to college, I just thought, I should get back into it. So I was in Montgomery, and I found a Taekwondo place and got back into it, and then made it up to like green belt, which is like an intermediate belt. But then, graduate, got to get a big boy job and all that. So I stopped. And then when I was about 29, that's when I really got back into it as a green belt. And I found another Tong Soo place, which is where what the Websters were, my original style. And got back into it. And I've been doing it ever since. So 29, now I'm 54. So whatever that math is.
That's crazy. That's really pretty nuts. And then to turn it into a legitimate business that, like, makes you a living, and then, in my opinion, makes a difference in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I tell people, and what we've talked about on the podcast, I talk about this with all my baseball teams and stuff, is like, you take a kid in there and you stick them in that class, they change like fast. Like their attention span, when someone's going to punch you in the face, they really pay attention. They really do. They're like listening to what you say, because the cause and effect of not listening is so automatic. It's like, if you don't learn to block your face, this kid over here is going to punch you in the face. And I think, like, for Wiley specifically, he was like he was kind of a crybaby, man. Like, he just very emotional. You know what I mean? And that has gone away some. Is that what you typically see?
Yeah. A lot of, they watch cartoons and they watch shows and they see, fights, and everybody wants to be a ninja and feels like they are. And then when it doesn't happen, then they don't like that one bit. Mm-hmm. So it sort of hurts their feelings a little bit. They don't know what it feels like. Nobody's ever punched them. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really hurt. When they're crying, they're almost never in pain. It might have sort of smarted a little bit, but it jars you. It jars you physically, emotionally, mentally, because when somebody just hits you, all kinds of things that well up and spill over. So I think that's why there's a lot of crying and everything. There's just a lot of value in knowing what it feels like to get punched in the face.
Yeah, I agree.
Or get the breath knocked out of you. And we don't try to create that, but we try to make it as safe as possible where they don't get punched in the face, where they're blocking and wear gear and all that. But it's going to happen anyway. Mm-hmm. And when it does, I think it's a growing moment.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Good to know you're not going to die, or that you're not incapacitated. Mm-hmm. Because when it first happens, like, your brain doesn't know what's coming next. Like, was I'm about to pass out? Am I about to collapse? You don't know. And to just be able to, whether you cry or whatever, breathe and just realize, really, I'm okay. Mm-hmm. And the next step of that is not being afraid for it to happen again. So. Yeah.
Well, the resiliency that I've seen in Wiley, especially in the little tournaments that we've done, like the first tournament we did, he got his ass kicked. And
well, yeah, it was a big
yeah, he got smoked. But he didn't quit, that's all that matters. Mm-hmm. Getting beat up is part of life. And then when you had your in-house tournament, he got really upset in that thing. He got to squealing pretty good. And I called him over and I was like, hey man, just don't quit. Just don't quit. And he ended up winning the thing. And there's two kids in his class. It's him and a kid named Maxie. And neither of them have any chill.
Right.
You're like, hey, go soft. Neither of them go soft. They're 100%, unless you physically get down there on their level and be like, hey man, this kid's learning, chill out, mm-hmm. And so they spar really well together because they both are pretty passionate individuals. But I think the thing that's impressed me the most watching it, and I've done this since bringing Wiley to you, we started playing baseball too, and I was coaching baseball, is your adoption of a new student into the class. Like, your philosophy on that, and we've talked about this a couple of times, but I would like for you to explain that to everybody. Like, there's no big to-do. Mm-hmm. They just walk in and just are part of the group. You don't give them any special treatment, any special training. Right. You're just like, hey, everybody line up and kick that thing. And then the kid doesn't even ever feel, they don't look like they feel uncomfortable. I don't know. Yeah. You just explain it, how you learned to do that.
I guess it just came naturally. A lot of places do they'll do a trial class, but it's like an appointment. Mm-hmm. And they'll come with their mom. There's nobody else there. You explain some of the basics to them, and bowing on the mat, and go through, learn a couple of kicks or punches or whatever. And it's like a 15-minute deal or whatever. And but that doesn't seem to matter. Mm-hmm. That doesn't show them what what it's like or what it's going to be about. So I think what more people do, or at least what I do, is their trial is just come be part of a regular class. So they jump in, and so there's this martial arts etiquette that sort of changed over the years. But even when I started, the mat was a place of training. It was not a place of playing. I would say, no running on the mat. You don't run on the mat. You would probably think that had never been my philosophy because when you walk in at the beginning, they're all playing and running around. But just over time, I started questioning, I want them to feel comfortable here. I want them to feel like this is a home, a place that belongs to them. I don't want them to abuse my things, and I don't want them to hurt each other. But I sort of slowly said, okay, y'all can run. And they would like sort of play freeze tag, over the years. And I'd be like, so now I just let them full out play. And if people get hurt, well, that's what you get, kind of thing. So before class, people are running around playing. They're playing. They start the newest one that they're doing now is like red light, green light. They've been doing that one lately. And they just do it themselves. They orchestrate it, and it's just for like 10 minutes before class when everybody gets there. They want to get there early so they have time to play. Mm-hmm. And so a new student comes in and they see them playing, and that just looks fun. So, I tell them how to bow on the mat and all right, go play. And so they're already building relationships with those kids. And then when we start the class, then they learn, oh, this is something different, so now we're lining up. Mm-hmm. And so then they have a spot, I tell her, with that age, you don't have to, no matter how long they've been there, you have to tell them, you stand on this dot, you stand on this dot. And, put him on his dot or her on her dot. And then we go through bowing in, which is how we start the class and everything. And anyway, they just become a part of the class. And I might, as they're coming around, I know they may not know all the kicks. So I'll say, we're going to do this kick. And then I'll have one of the other kids demonstrate it. And I'll make sure that I'm talking to that kid. And so they'll see. And if they get up to the target and they're sort of unsure, I'll say, show them. And then that's pretty much it. I try to make them immediately feel welcome. When we bow in, I say, we got a new student starting. Everybody say hello to Wiley. Hey, Wiley, whatever. And so that's pretty much it.
It works so good.
Yeah, it's just trying to make them feel a part of it. To me, it's always been about building community with the kids, with the parents, with the families. And so it's a place they want to be.
Have you ever had any outliers? Like problem parents?
Not too many. Some parents they have only invested in their own kids for so long, which you should, but they don't understand like group dynamics or just the differences in other kids. So if somebody gets hurt, like there's a couple of girls and they would, when they would spar, one of them would just a little, maybe more spastic and would hurt the other girl. Not bad, but maybe she'd accidentally scratch her or whatever. And after, the second time, it must be on purpose and they don't like her. That child doesn't like my child. And could you please make sure they don't spar each other again? Mm-hmm. To which I always say, sure, I'm not gonna be like, no. But I do it with reconciling that in mind, So for these particular girls, because when the parents jump in and said, I can't believe that she did that, she's probably doing that on purpose. Well, that convinces the kid that that's what's happening. So now you're creating this rift in this relationship, and it's almost like enemies.
Yeah.
And we can't spar each other. So because you can't spar each other, anytime that they're sparring, and it's the natural thing because they're the right size and everything, and I don't put them together, they know, because we're not supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. It just reinforces the rift.
Yeah.
And so I just try to, over time, close that rift. So I definitely don't let them, spar for, a few weeks or whatever. And then I'll just put them in groups together where they're, when we're training or whatever, and they're interacting. And then I make them partners holding targets. They're not hitting each other, so they're not getting accidental scratch or anything. And then we'll do something else, like that's more of a game, like flag sparring, where you're you put flags in your belt like a flag football, and you try to go in and grab the flags out, sort of like a sparring drill. And so, and I go to the mom and say, "Well, you mind if they're obviously the same height?
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if they do?" Well, and it's usually not going to say no. I told you not. At this point, it's been a few weeks. I have a chance to die down. She's like, "No, that'll be fine." Because you have to get the mom to come around too.
Yeah.
It's not just getting the kids. It's mostly not getting the kids. It's getting the mom to come around. And this is like a recent thing. So then just recently we were sparring and I just put them together and I looked at both the girls and I was like, "Are you good sparring her? Are you good with sparring her?" They're like, yeah. So now, but it's a gradual thing. But if you try to have too much of an ego about it or be like, "This is my program," which some people do, or I'm not going to not put two people together when they're the same size of the people. Like these girls were taller and like it's anybody else against them, it's not really fair. So I have to make the parents feel heard, which also makes them feel like they're a part of what's going on. But I have to try to move everybody forward.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
It's brutal. Parents are awesome, but brutal. It's the same way in baseball. Like, I have to tell them, like, "Hey, don't come out here."
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I have to catch myself. Like in your class, we sit and watch. And for the first 6 months, every time my kid was being a dink, because all of mine are on a whistle. So I can whistle from the crowd, and he's looking for me. I'm like, freaking quit being a dink. But now I found myself where I'm like, well, he's gonna end up doing push-ups or whatever he's got to do, which is better for him than me managing his behavior from afar. And so I find myself, parents, especially parents who are helicopter parents, I have to tell them, like when their kid gets hit with the ball or whatever, they're coming around the dugout like they're going to come out on that ball field. And I'm like, no. No. If he's bleeding, I will come get you, And I tell all the kids the first practice just loud enough where all the parents can hear. I'm like, on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 8, I'm your mommy out here. You know what I mean? Like that, just so they know, the parents know. Like, and I'm kind of a little bit unapproachable in that role. Like the parents don't feel like they can just come say whatever,
right?
Because I kind of act that way. Like I'm making their kid do push-ups, and they're 5 years old, and so they're like, "God, this guy's kind of crazy." Like, what he's saying, which is good because all the boys love it, but. That's awesome, man. I think what you have built, I travel all over the country and teach people how to rope and stuff, and the coolest places I go are these communities of people who are like-minded. And for whatever reason, we're gonna place the God does this. He places the people in position to create this, but the community that you've built with these kids and with their parents specifically, because I sit and visit with the parents. It's unbelievable. It's very rare. It's very rare to find this in the world. And I think you focusing on the community more than the growth, maybe, or more than your own pride, or more than tradition, has created that where people just like want to be there. Like my kid is immediately like, if we're not 15 minutes early, he is pissed. Like really, he's mad. And like his favorite thing is to run through that door you're in there vacuuming and to run from the vacuum. I mean, it's just hilarious. Even my 2-year-old is at home practicing his kicks, getting ready when he's old enough to jump in. So it's unbelievable. And it's a testament to like, very similar to me, I was introduced to horses at a young age, but I didn't start doing it until I was 25 years old. And, I mean, we're talking 8 years, and I've built an entire career off of starting that late in life. And similar to martial arts, cowboying is like the greatest ever have to be doing it from the time they're 3 years old. It's just not true.
Right.
If you dedicate yourself to something, you can do a lot with it. But so let's let's drop back a little bit. So
Mhm.
we were a youth pastor. Now, this church you were talking about, this is the church where I went to high school, right? Like,
That's not the one I originally started at.
okay,
It was in Montgomery,
okay,
and then I did that for 7 years. Went to Texas for a couple of years, and then came back to Prattville, and that's when I was at
okay.
church where
So,
affiliated more with.
yeah, so back in the day when I was in high school, and I didn't really know Todd at this time because I was an idiot. I was one of those 18-year-olds that was a total buffoon. But Todd was the youth pastor at the church that was associated with the high school that I went to. And so, what are kind of the do you find more? Did you find more fulfillment in that job, or teaching the martial art? The way you're able to kind of guide the kids from a martial arts perspective, or did you like the youth pastor role more?
I liked both of them, so they're just different. I like in the youth pastor, I was more with teenagers and sort of trying to guide them and their crazy thought processes. And I don't have as many teenagers in martial arts; it's mostly younger kids. But they're just different. One is really, I felt like I'm pouring into teenagers, and the other one's some teenagers, but mostly kids. What the benefit in the martial arts world is, I always felt, step back, in ministry, I would get them at 6th grade, and I would get to watch them grow from 6th grade all the way till 12th grade. And then even beyond. So I would be able to be a part of their lives. I'm there, if their parents are having issues, or, the first time they get into some fight, argument at school, first date, got my driver's license, I made the team, all this, all the way till they graduate high school, which is neat to be a part of people's lives for that long. Martial arts, some people I start with 4 years old, like Noah and Troy. They were little dragons, so they started when they were 5, years old or so. And now Noah's just turned 18, Troy's 16. So, now I'm in their life from the time that they're even younger, from like 5 years old up until 18 years old. So that's, fulfilling. I enjoy influencing young people and talking to parents about it, helping parents sort of see the things I've seen and that kind of thing. So they're similar in a lot of different ways. There are things I like better about youth ministry, some of the programs we got going and everything, but I really like watching kids go from uncoordinated to beasts.
From warriors.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you found the vocation of the youth pastor, right, is surrounded by this all-encompassing connotation of this guy is a preacher versus the martial arts instructor who brings the identity that Christ gave you into the vocation? Do you feel like you've had opportunities in the martial arts world to guide a kid that would have never said the things they would have said to you as a youth pastor? That makes sense? Like, there's things at 16 years old I can guarantee you I wouldn't have said to a youth pastor.
Right.
But my baseball coach, I could go to that guy who was chewing snuff on that ball field, cussing me out for missing blocks, and go to him and say, I'm having a hard time with this. And he was a believer, rough around the edges, not a youth pastor by any means, but he was able to go, hey man, let me tell you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still gonna cuss you out. We're still gonna run. But like Sam Peake, like this guy, he is most certainly a godly man in my opinion. Rough. That dude was rough. Does he know Jesus? I think so.
Yeah.
Especially now in where he's at in life now. But there was times where I said stuff to that guy that I would have never said to the guy leading chapel at PCA. You know what I mean? Because he was out there with me when it was 30 degrees. making me do push-ups and run. He was out there with me, helping me hit better, helping me block balls better, helping me throw people out. And so I think the coach-kid relationship is extremely important for a young man. Even if you have a dad, if you don't have a dad, it's even more so important. But I think even for the kid with a dad, to send that kid in there with somebody who is not going to go home with them, that is not concerned with, I'm literally here for your benefit and that's it. And then we're going to leave. And then tomorrow I'm going to get after it again. And those guys really had an impact on me as a young man, like my work ethic and my ability to persevere. But I said things to them that I would have never said in a church. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Have you had that experience as a martial arts instructor? Like,
I've had the experience. So I feel like the way that I did ministry, I tried to make myself approachable. I wasn't, I'm up here, down here. Let me bestow upon you the teachings of Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I was like, everything that I would try to talk about, it was like, okay, here's what the Bible says. Why do we care? Now, what can we do about it? You know, how can we apply it? And that's from a teaching standpoint, but just from a relationship standpoint, I tried to build real relationships where they knew me for me, and try to make an environment where people did feel comfortable coming and sharing those things, and they did. And I also didn't, you know, just like you said, there needs to be somebody who's not a parent. And sometimes I'm not the right person for every person. They can't, like, to assume that me and all of these teenagers are going to just click on the same level, you know, it's pretty presumptuous. So, you know, we did churches that were doing small groups for years. So we put the teens in small groups, and, you know, girls separate from guys, because that's a whole different dynamic, right? And then I would get parents to come be the small group leaders, and fly coming at me. So I would never put parents with their own kids, and parents would like, yeah, I'd like to teach my kids small group, and I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing. But I would always, whenever I recruited a small group leader, I didn't just have a sign-up sheet. I would go to lunch with them and say, okay, imagine this. Imagine you're going to take this group of, I know you have an 8th grader, but there's this new incoming group of 6th graders, and they're coming in, and you're going to be able to be their first experience with youth ministry and this part of the church. But also, I'm asking you not just to commit for a quarter. You know, people like to find a quarterly teacher, whatever. I'm asking you to commit for as long as they're in this group. And yeah, you don't have to stay. If things happen, you change your mind, decide you don't like it, some changes in your life, you can definitely quit. But I want you to come into this thinking, okay, I'm going to be with this group of boys until they graduate high school. And I start describing what that could look like and what it's looked like for others over the years. So these kids, they come in, when it's just a quarter at a time, you want somebody cool that the kids will like immediately. But if they're going to be there for the long haul, they can be the dorkiest dad. You know what I mean? They can be, but they're just there. They're always there. And I've heard so many kids on the graduation days talk about so-and-so volunteer who, you know, they didn't really give any big speeches or anything, but they were just there. And that was comforting. And I knew I could always go to them. So I try to, you know, do that intentionally, put things like that in their lives. So all that to say, I would say it's different for me in martial arts, because that was part of my goal in ministry, which I don't think it was as common, you know. But also I think that's why, like, our big night was Wednesday nights, and we'd have fewer people show up on Sunday morning, but Wednesday night is when it was all about helping them to grow. Because Sundays, something different about Sundays, it's got to be churchy.
Yeah.
You know, but Wednesday, it's just a Wednesday, right? But that's when I had the most people invite their kids, their friends from school. I might have 13 on a Sunday morning in class and have 80 on a Wednesday night in class, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I would tell people, I know this doesn't sound very churchy, but if your kid can only come to one, I would say come Wednesday night for your teenager, because that's where it's all, they're with the most. So that's always been a big part of what I tried to do in ministry, because I felt like regular church didn't bear the fruit that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about. So in martial arts, they don't always stay that long, but when they do, you've got a good relationship with them. But like there was a young lady that was testing for black belt a couple of years ago, and one day she just started talking about everything, that she was stressed, and she just started opening up about everything going on in her family. Her dad, mom were divorced, and he lives in a different state, and just a lot of everything is just heavy on her heart. And I told her mom, was like, yeah, because she was doing training to get ready for a black belt test, but we ended up stopping and her just pouring all that out. And I told her mom a couple of days later, I was like, her mom said, yeah, she's going through, and I sort of commented on it. She's like, oh, you know about that? I said, yeah, she sat down and told me all of that. And she's never told anybody any of this stuff. And I was like, well, yeah, we had a good talk about it. And I said, and here's what I told her, because the philosophy is, and I got this from some other mentors of mine, is you're not doing things the parents can't do. It's not you in addition to the parents, it's partnering with the parents.
Yes.
Even if you ask the parents not to participate, it's for the parents' own good, because that's going to help the child grow. Mm-hmm. So, for example, not letting them be their own child's teacher, that kind of thing. Had a young lady that had told me that she was doing self-harm type stuff. This wasn't, anyway, her normal philosophy of most people, I think, would be that child's parents need to know immediately. Mm-hmm. And that their parents do need to. I would want to know immediately.
Yes.
I would be frustrated if I found out other people just knew this and nothing was being done and I didn't know about it. But the difference is, I knew if I just went straight to her parents, that trust is shattered.
Yes.
And it's not going to, and just because of the dynamics with the parents, she would they'd have a big fight and she would run out, climb out her window and go to her friend. It would just be it's a rift with the parent. So I just took a few weeks, continued to talk to her about it and to try to bring her around and try to get her to tell her parents. Or to get her, what came down to is she couldn't imagine, nothing inside her, she couldn't even imagine saying these words to her parents. And so I asked her, well, would you want me to tell? And that she seemed to be okay with that. And, this was over a course of conversations for weeks. Mm-hmm. Meantime, some of my mentors, I was like, you don't need to be keeping this from your parents. I was like, I'm not keeping it from your parents. Whether it's 10 minutes or 10 days, we're getting there.
Yeah.
And so eventually she let me do it. She didn't want to be in the room. So I called her parents and said, I'm going to come over and she's going to go in her room and I'm going to talk to you guys for a little bit. And I just told them all that's going on. And I could see welling up, like I could see what the girl was saying, because, they're protective and they're scared. That's the bottom line. They're scared. They don't know what this is all about. But having been in ministry, know a lot of people I did. And they thought, oh no, we're going to have to send her to some rehab place or some mental institution because she was, cutting and doing, harming herself in different ways. And, I explained that doesn't mean she's suicidal. It's a whole different thing, and sort of talked to him a little bit about that and what that meant. And right now, you're the parents, do what you want. But I would suggest that when I leave, that you just call out here and you just give her a big hug, tell her you love her, and don't bring it up and say, we can talk about this another time. And that's what they did. And they said, well, we don't want you to leave this. They called her in and they did those things and hugged her, and the girl is just released. You could just see it, just a relief. But if you do things the traditional church way, that strengthens the relationship with the parents. It's the difference between big fight, run away, and wow, they're respecting how I feel about this, my boundaries. They're understanding a little bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need another person to help bridge that gap. But the regular line of thinking, I think sometimes, while there's nothing wrong with it, and it may seem to be true in a lot of cases, sometimes it may be that's what you should do. But I always try to look beyond that. What's going to happen tomorrow after you do what you're supposed to do and go tell the parents? Well, I did what I need to do, so I'm feeling good about myself. And am I not a good minister?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm leaving carnage at home.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So the best thing I could do to partner with those parents was to not immediately go tell them.
Yeah.
And they told me that later. Thank you for handling it the way that you did. We would have never wanted you to do that in the beginning, but seeing how it worked out, we just want to thank you for that. So I think that kind of thinking pours into what I do, both with ministry. It's really how I interact with people. So it's going to carry on the martial arts too. There's not as many opportunities to have those real important conversations, but they do come up, and when they do, I feel like parents are the most grateful. Because with the kids, I'm not saying I get it. Your parents don't understand, but I understand. That's what a lot of youth ministers like to do. I don't even use any words like that. I don't even bring me or that into it. We just work through it and then try to find the best way for the parents to, to move forward.
Well, I listened to a podcast this morning a good friend of mine made, and it was his first one, his first solo adventure, and we spent a large portion of the time identifying problems. And then the solutions to those problems boiled down to reading the Bible and praying. And I need to go back and listen to some of my own episodes to kind of check myself on this. Because while reading the Bible and praying are the answer in a lot of situations, it's a terrible answer to the problem. Like it's you just telling a guy, hey man, go pray about it. Hey man, to a guy that doesn't know, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, I need some steps here. I need some, like, it's easy to identify the problem, especially for young people. It's like, I can go to my sons when they're 12 years old and be like, hey man, porn is a problem. Don't get in that. Stay away from it. Okay. No tools, no preparation, no understanding of like what it's actually going to be like, and I think we often make it we simplify it a little too much as far as like, we just need to get in the Word. Well, what if I don't understand a damn thing that book says?
Right.
Well, pray about that. Right. I mean, so it's one of those deals where he was talking about marriage and all these things, and it's like, what I try to do in this podcast is share my life in a way that's like, okay, this is where I knocked my head. This is what I've done to get around those barriers and continue down the path. That doesn't mean they're the only walls that are going to come up, but at least you'll know about these few that I ran into. And it's one of those things where, like, there's no perfect answer to anything. And I had a similar situation. My sister, big time self-harm deal. And she told us before her parents, me and my wife, and we kind of had to share that. But I did the same thing. It's like I was more interested in her than what her folks were going to think, that sort of thing. And it's all kind of coming around now, but it's very challenging because you can warn of the pitfalls, but then walking the walk with a guy is what it's really all about. It's like not leaving the carnage. Right. I go to Wiley in 6 years and I say, hey man, if you get into porn, it's going to do this to you. And then walk off like some damn 12-year-old's going to know what to do with that information, And it's almost impossible nowadays not to fall into that trap. That's why it's the easiest example. But the same thing applies to letting your kids eat nothing but Oreos. Like, hey man, if you get fat, your life's gonna suck.
Right.
Like, pick your heart. You know what I mean? And what it boils down to, and listening to that podcast this morning, and I did a similar podcast. I shot a solo episode that'll be out before this one. But I asked my buddy Daryl's wife. I said, "What should I do a podcast on today?" Because I was shooting in their studio, and she was like, "Where have the masculine men gone?" That was what she wanted me to talk about. And so I did no research on this, nothing. But I've been writing my book, and chapter 2 of the book is the first battleground, the flesh. And this is like, as a 12-year-old, I don't give a crap how much you tell your kids about Jesus. Like, they're going to have no understanding the flesh versus the spirit until 13 years old, when that old pecker starts getting hard and they don't know what to do with all that. Like, this is a new, you cannot just go through that alone and survive. You can't do it. And so I was really boiling down what the flesh is. And the flesh, to me, is the search for comfort. It's the selfishness in finding comfort for yourself. That's what the flesh is. So you can apply all these things to this, whether it's sexual desire, whether it's eating, whether it's pride, whatever. You're trying to make yourself feel good. That's what you're doing. And so that is compatible. In the way that I've decided to teach my kid anyway, and how I wish it would have been taught to me, was teaching him to not choose comfort. Don't choose to be comfortable. Being comfortable is the ultimate destroyer of a man. Like, it's going to destroy you. So if you choose to be comfortable in your marriage and sit on the couch like a fat, lazy piece of crap and don't love your wife and all these things, your wife's going to hate you. If you do that with your kids are going to resent you. Like, nobody wants their superhero to be some lazy sucker that just searches for comfort. You know what I mean? Like, you want to watch your dad do hard things. And so the whole chapter in the book and the whole thing I listened to on the podcast this morning, all I could think about was all of these things that we call the flesh, right? So the sexual desire, the porn, the eating, the laziness, all this is summed up for me in one. Those are all symptoms of a man searching for comfort. You are simply trying to meet your needs with something other than Christ. Because what Christ calls you to do is to be uncomfortable. And what you did with that gal is uncomfortable. Going and sitting with someone's parents and telling them probably the most horrible thing they've ever heard in their life is very uncomfortable, comparatively just dropping the bomb and freaking dipping. Right. Yeah, you got some stuff going on here. I got a class to teach, you know? And so I think training our young men and young women from a very young age of like, discomfort is good. Hard things are good. And like me and Wiley's little saying is, and I at least twice a day, I'm like, hey buddy, how do you get what you want? And the answer is hard work and effort. How do you get what you want? Hard work and effort. How do you get what you want? Hard work and effort. And the world will tell you that this is craziness. And I got an example. You're not even believe it. So I told Wiley 2 months ago, we're at the park, and he likes the monkey bars, like a lot, like obnoxious. And he's really funny about his calluses on his hands. Like, he wants hard hands, And I told him, I said, okay, I'm going to jump up on these monkey bars and do some pull-ups. If you can beat me in pull-ups, I'll go buy you a Nintendo Switch. And he was like, okay. So I jumped up there and I did 5. And I was like, okay, if you can do 6, I'll go buy you one. The day you do it, I'll go buy you one. So he climbs up there, and for an hour we sat there, and he could do 2. And he kept doing 2 over and over. He'd jump down and he'd cry, And so for 2 months, Todd, I can take you back there right now to his room. He's got a pull-up bar in his door. 2 months. We got a pull-up bar in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a ladder he takes out there. He's just doing pull-ups. He takes a Tupperware bin full of gym chalk. He chalks up and he does the pull-ups. Two weekends ago, he comes running out on a Friday night. He's like, I did. Like, you did what? He's like, I did 6 pull-ups. I was like, no, you did. He's like, I did. And I was like, it don't count unless I see it, okay? And he was like, okay, fine, come on. So I go back there to his room. He climbs up that freaking ladder, jumps over that pull-up bar, and knocks down 6 pull-ups. And I was like, oh, crap, you actually did 6 pull-ups. Like, I couldn't believe it. He's been working on it for months, and I'd never seen him get past 4, but he flat did them. And it was mental. I think he had a little mental block. Like, he'd get to 4, and then he'd really have to try to do 2 more. And he didn't know how to really try yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, we're going tomorrow. I mean, we're going to go tomorrow and buy the thing because this is incredible. You earned it, you know. And so, but this is what I'm getting at. This is the world versus the spirit, right? Mm-hmm. So my spirit for the young man is for him to be able to do hard things and then get rewarded for that, because that is the nature of the good father. The good father in heaven says, hey, I'm going to ask you to do the hardest shit you've ever done in your whole life, and I'm going to reward you for it. Yeah. And that's been my relationship with Christ since I've decided to follow. And in my opinion, I'm the closest picture Wiley has right now to that. Mm-hmm. And while I can't tell him what, you know, the hormones are going to be like and all those things, I can teach him the tools, the mental tools he'll need when it comes to that. And so that's what we're working on now, 6 years old, and that's what pull-ups are. Mm-hmm. And so, but here's what the world says, okay? I go to family dinner, and I'm jacked. Right? I'm like, the kid's an animal. I mean, this kid is a unit. And we go in, and he tells everybody, and they're all like, yeah, good job. And then my sister and my brother-in-law were like, you spent $500 because your kid can do 6 pull-ups? And Tom,
they don't get it.
Buddy, I came untrained. I'm not kidding. I mean, Wiley had walked into the garage, and I stood up, and I said, let me tell you something. I said, if I had $1 million sitting right here, you couldn't do 6 pull-ups, and he couldn't do 6 pull-ups, and she couldn't do 6 pull-ups, but that damn 6-year-old right there would knock him down with his eyes closed. And I was like, you're going to sit here and tell me that my gift, my reward for that was too much when you couldn't even do 1? This kid worked for 2 months for something. You ain't worked for 2 months for anything in your whole life. Shut your mouth. You know what I mean? But that's the thing about it, is that's what the world's going to do to your son. That's what they're going to do to your daughter. Mm-hmm. They're going to say, man, that hard work, that ain't worth that. You know, that's crazy that you're going to work that hard for something. And it's like, that is the enemy. That is Satan trying to bury your talent. That's what he's trying to do. And it just, man, it flew all over me. I was like, dude, you're going to sit here and tell me that this youngin', it's easier for a 6-year-old to do pull-ups than it is for you? Get out of here, dude. Get out of here. And because it's hard. Pull-ups are freaking hard, dude. Like, legit. And like, push-ups are one thing, but freaking pull-ups are the real deal. And so it's one of those things for me that I ask myself, and I pray about this all the time. I'm like, Lord, allow me to lead well. And what does that look like? It doesn't look like a bunch of ass whoopings and chewings. Mm-hmm. It looks like offering a way to understand what's going to happen to him. Because as he comes into the world, like Mike is going into the military and leaves in, what, a week for basic, as prepared as he's ever going to be. Like, he is going to breeze through that 8 weeks like it's nothing, because he has been prepared for this. And what is going to be the biggest reality check for that guy is what he's surrounded by. the other people in his flight. And really, probably the hardest part for him is going to be loving the people around him, because he is going to continually be punished for their stupidity and lack of preparation. And he doesn't need to be mad at them. He needs to be mad at their damn daddies.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's our job. It's our job to prepare them for this stuff. And they won't be.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be one or two guys in there. They're like, oh, this is easy. But most of them, and all of them will lie. They'll all come out and be like, oh, basic training was easy. All of them will cry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's my goal, is to come out with a youngin' that is prepared and then react in the way that those parents reacted to you coming to them and telling them that
Mm-hmm.
like, because the empathy that I feel for the young man is pretty deep, because we're given no tools.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not everybody tells you what's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and then they tell you to read and pray, and then you just end up watching the stuff anyway or eating whatever you want anyway because you're not ready. You don't know what's coming, and it's tough.
But the people that just say, be in the Word and pray. For the average human being, much less a teenager, like where to begin?
Oh,
like read,
yeah.
like, unless you're saying, hey, here's a passage that was helpful to me, or a chapter that's one thing. But people don't do that because they don't know it. They just know the value in the reading and praying is that it becomes something that's a part of your life, right? Not just, I'm going through this. Okay, then you just need to be in the Bible more, because you open it up, you start reading stuff, you get bored. Because where do you start? Genesis? Well, it's going to be a long time until I get to the part I'm, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So maybe I'll skip ahead a few books. I'm Leviticus. What is this all about? Yeah. This is the most boring crap.
I don't have any tabernacles to build, old son.
So let's jump into Matthew or whatever. Let's go to the Gospels. And that's a lot more helpful, but sometimes it takes you just reading through it on your own for things to come to you, for it to make sense, to say, oh, that's why. So that's got to come first, really. Mm-hmm. To say, I've got the tragedy, I've got the problem, now I go jump into the Word. That's not as effective as teaching people we need to be in the Word regularly, and things will be revealed to you that will help you. Mm-hmm. Now that you can't, the average person who can just open it right up and it comes, God's going to show me what He wants to tell me, and it's
that's not that's not.
So that's not helpful. And depending on the situation, like our preacher got to the point, he used to tell everybody, take out your Bibles, hold up your Bible, and let's say this together. And then we went to this conference of ministers, and he walked out of there going, man, I've been doing this all wrong. I've been messing this up. He said, I just became aware that, when I tell people to hold up their Bible and turn to Matthew chapter 3, then I'm sort of alienating all the people who don't have a Bible and don't know where Matthew is. You know what I'm saying? So that's why that was back when people were kind of pushing against, let's put the verses on the screen because they need to be in their Bible. Mm-hmm. Well, people that aren't familiar with it, and a lot of people that are going to be, that might not be helpful to them. But you can just eliminate that altogether by just saying, let's read this together on the screen, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's included, and that makes it more, you're putting you have to have somebody that speaks for the people that aren't here already, or have somebody who's going to be speaking on behalf of the people that aren't as articulate as we are, or people that aren't as educated, or the people that haven't grown up in church. If you're just talking to people that are like you, then you're not going to understand how you can help the people that aren't like you.
Yeah. And
past tradition has been, well, let's just make them like us. and
yeah.
Then they'll do it. And that was the way to do it. And you'd have these, rough around the edges guys, all of a sudden quoting things that don't make sense, but they're trying to be like the people that are teaching them,
Yeah.
And they're trying to make points that I heard the other guy make because now, so you're making people be more like you, and it's not helping people to be more like Jesus.
Well, and that's the thing, is that the king gave you an identity for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose is for the kingdom. Like, your identity is important for the kingdom. And like, to me, man, you go to a church on Sunday to get fed, to go out and make disciples for the kingdom. Like, each person that's in the church that is a devoted believer, this is their purpose. Your purpose is to go to church. Like Philip Anthony Mitchell, the way he teaches, I learn from. Like, the way he explains it, I don't know why some dude from Queens, New York is the greatest Bible teacher I've ever heard in my life. And just everything he freaking says, I'm like, right in the old chest, But it helps me walk into my life and love the people around me, because that's my purpose. My purpose isn't to listen to Philip Anthony Mitchell and then die and go to heaven. My purpose is to listen to him and then love you. That's my job. And like, there's two guys that work for me. I sat down with everybody that works at the rope shop. We were having some like issues. I think I told you about this. Long story short, I brought them all in the office and I told them, like, you don't have to do this with me, but if you don't, you can go work somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're going to work here with me, you're going to follow me. I am your leader. This is the way that I lead. And we went through everybody's identity. And so the goal of finding everybody's identity in Christ, which this is something that's given to you by God in communion with Him. You have to physically ask Him, like, Lord, what is the truth about me? What do you actually believe about me? And so I did it with everybody. There's 6 of them. And so my identity in Christ for the kingdom of heaven is I am a relationship builder. That is Dalton's job for the kingdom of heaven. And if you walk through my entire life, it's very evident that that was my identity the whole time. I just didn't know it, which is the enemy's number one goal, is to like divert you off of that identity. Because if he can keep you believing the lie for as long as possible, you can't fulfill your purpose at all. And so I went through it. It was Madison, Alyssa, Caden, Blake, and Justin. Justin and Blake were fighting all the time. And so I went in and I did it with them. And so what we found is that Madison, her true identity in Christ is the lover. And it looks like, from a worldly perspective, she's an enabler. And I make fun of her all the time. But she's not. She just genuinely loves people. Like, it's like she sees the good in you, even when you don't. And this is very apparent with the people who work for me, because most of them are just degenerates. And then you have Alyssa, and her identity is the caregiver. That's what brings her joy, is to just take care of people, Caden is a young man, very similar to Micah in my respect for him. He just turned 17, and this kid knows the Bible better than I do. He's like the greatest sidekick on earth. For me, because I'm talking to Justin about spiritual truth and just like, hey, this is what we need to do. We need to be thinking about it this way. Caden, what does the Bible say about that? So, tell the truth in love. Like, yeah, tell the truth in love, yada, yada, yada. And so his identity is a truth seeker. Mm-hmm. He's a real, like, just wants to be in it and figuring it out. And then Blake, additionally, he's 10 years older than Caden, has 4 kids, a wife. He additionally is a truth seeker as well, but he has always sought the truth in science. Like, that's his problem with believers. It's like, no one ever wants to have a scientific conversation with him or an argument about these things. It just pisses them off and they leave. Well, him and Caden are tit for tat. Like, Caden literally does the CC homeschool program. You know what I'm talking about? It's like this. It's super high on debating and Caden he's the real deal. So him and Blake are always talking about, Caden's the side of the Bible, Blake is science. Mm-hmm. And then you have Justin, who is a teacher, and which is unbelievable. And usually when God gives you your true identity, it's very difficult for you to believe this. So like Blake, even though he studies all this scientific stuff trying to figure out how the universe was made, the guy can hardly read. Like, dropped out of high school, very difficult time reading. Well, so Blake, the older truth seeker, calls me last week, And he's like, boss man, I don't have anybody else to talk to. My marriage is falling apart. And so we talk about it, and I'm pretty hard on husbands. Like I'm immediately gonna go straight to you. Mm-hmm. Like we're not gonna shit talk your wife. We're not gonna talk about the things that she's doing. She's doing those things because there's been a letdown on, like, the responsibility falls to you. You're the leader of your house. And so I'm just gently walking him through this. Like, look, man, the reason why going to buy a new pillow is a big fight at your house mm-hmm. is because we're not leading our family well, you know? Mm-hmm. And I'm telling him, I'm like, the truth is in the word. And like you said, right? So I could say right there, you need to pray and you need to read your Bible. But my man can't read.
Right.
Not well. And the Bible's hard to read.
Right.
And comparatively to a kid's book. And so I walk into the rope shop to drop off the rent check, and I walk over to Kate and I said, stop tying ropes. I go in the office. I want you to write down, Google search every verse in the Bible that has to do with being a husband. I want you to write them all down. And then I want you to send them to me. And then I walk out. Mm-hmm. And I was driving to Daryl's place. By the time me and Blake were off the phone, he was at work. He was sitting in his truck crying. And I was like, okay, let's dry it up. I want you to go in there to Caden. I want you to sit down with Caden, and he's going to walk you through every verse in the Bible that has to do with being a husband. He's going to read every one of them to you, and he's going to explain every word you don't know the definition to. Mm-hmm. Go in there. And I was just tickled because on the way to Daryl's, I was like, God's given me two truth seekers, and Caden's never been married, mm-hmm. right? But he understands the Bible probably better than most people I know. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what an amazing gift for him to be able to sit down and explain these things to someone who needs it pretty bad. Mm-hmm. And for them to be very equally yoked in their search for knowledge. Mm-hmm. Like both of them want the truth. What's the truth, right? And for Caden to be able to offer that to him in a time where he most certainly needs it. We're talking about destruction of life here. Right. Like the tearing of flesh if they decide to get divorced. And for their kids, a brutal situation for young children. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. But that's the point of the identity. That if I didn't know the identities, mm-hmm. and we didn't take the time to sit down and learn that, then what? You know what I mean? And but I don't even know where we started to get to here. But
what makes the identity thing so important is, so people put a lot of emphasis on the Bible, and some people, you might say, would worship the Bible. It's like, but the Bible is the most important thing. Look to the Bible, look to the Bible, look to the Bible. But if that were entirely true in and of itself, you could just hand him a Bible or give it to him on audio, mm-hmm. and we could just do like the Gideons and just distribute Bibles. Mm-hmm. But the power of the transforming message of Jesus, the Bible is a part of it, but it's about people sharing their experiences with God and what they've seen him do in the lives of others and in their own life. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Bible is. Jesus didn't write a single word of the Bible. Mm-hmm. You know, God did. Who did? It was people that had witnessed it, people who had seen it, people who had experienced it and seen how it affected others. And they were, writing this stuff down. And, the power of God's word is us, in and of itself. It's not a magical book that's going to transform you, but you use that is this book of how God's worked in the lives of people, with you sharing, like, reinforce it by saying, this is how God's worked in my life. And now look here, this is how it's been for 2,000 years because these people are experiencing the same thing. This is just how it works. I think that's the most important thing. So to tell somebody just to go read the word and pray, it's isolationist. Mm-hmm. It's saying go on your own and figure it out by yourself.
Yeah.
But to do what you did.
It's Revelation 12:11. And he was defeated by the blood of the Lamb and their testimony. Mm-hmm. That's what Revelation 12:11 says.
Yeah. So, but what you did wasn't, well, here's a Bible, here's a couple of resources, go hammer it out.
Yeah, bro can't read.
Right. even if he could, that's still not helpful.
Yeah.
Even for most people who've been Christians all their lives, that's not really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll do it, there's value in it. But what is the most helpful is going to be some interaction they've had with another believer.
Mm-hmm. That's my experience. Mm-hmm. That's this pod. That's why I started the podcast, because I sat in church many a day, nothing.
Right.
And I would go into church hurting and think God's going to be talking to me today. Nothing. I convinced my wife one time to go to a damn marriage conference. My granddad was having it at his church, and he was like, y'all got to come. And we were having trouble. And I was like, this is going to change everything. It was the worst freaking marriage conference ever. Kara was like, this is so stupid. 2 days long, too. Uh-huh. And even my granddad at the end of it was like, yeah, my bad. And they laugh about it now, And it's funny because I was talking about that sermon I listened to this weekend with Madison and her husband Keith and Kara. And we were talking about the sheep and the goats and what Christ is going to do when he gets down here, which we're going to have an episode on this very soon. But, he's going to sit down on that throne of judgment, and he's going to separate the sheep from the goats. And I literally, Todd, I listened to this sermon on the way to a clinic this weekend, and I wept. I wept for my wife. I wept for my children, my mother, the people that worked for me. Because when he says to them, depart from me, you never knew me, anguish is not the word. And I told him, sitting at that kitchen table in there Saturday night, I said, I am not fearful for me. I will finish the race. I will bear fruit. And I do hold fast to the verse in 1 Corinthians that says your wife and your children will be sanctified through you. And I do believe that. And I do believe that Kara is changing daily and that my sons will be studs. But these other people, man, it says you cannot be a prophet in your own hometown. And I go to Sunday dinner every week with my family, and I called my mom, and I said, Mom, I prayed for you this morning because I am fearful that I am going to hear your cries of anguish on the day. Because there is a vast difference between walking with the Lord and bearing fruit for his kingdom and then being a goat. And, if you look at the statistics, there's 340 million people that live here. In America, there's 220 that claim Christ. And so a huge portion of that separation of sheep and goat on that day will be quote-unquote believers. Like most of them will be Christians. And he will say, depart from me, I never knew you. And if you read the word in the voice and you literally dig in there and listen to the cries, it's not like reading the words on the page. Lord, when did we see you naked? When did we see you hungry? When did we see you thirsty? That's not what that sounds like. It sounds like screaming in terror. It sounds like, oh God, we are going to get cast into the pit. And when you shift that to most people are not going to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. And most of those people around you are not going to hear that. That is terrifying. And it hit me right in the throat. I was like, dude, what is that? Like, and it was a halfway of conviction. And because, Paul says it in Acts, he says, I wash my hands of your blood. I preach the gospel to its fullest, But let me tell you something. He never quit writing letters. To the day they sent him to glory. he wrote letters. And so the believer, the sheep, the follower has to understand that, like, none of this other shit matters. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. It's your identity in a vocation. You have to go to work. You have to make money. But that guy sitting next to you, if he doesn't know what you are, then you are a goat. If he doesn't know who saved you, you're a goat. That ain't good. It's not the greatest of all time. And that might be one of the best acronyms the enemy ever came up with, is turning the word goat into the greatest of all time. Because if you're a goat, you're gonna burn in the lake, man. Like, that's not where we want to be. And so I'm very passionate about that. Like, the people who are around me every day are gonna hear it every day. And just like when Jesus sent the disciples out 2 by 2, if they don't want to hear it, they're going to leave. And I'm going to wipe my feet at their door. And better to be Sodom and Gomorrah than you on the day of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But if they stick around, they're catching both barrels every day. And that doesn't look like me quoting scripture. That doesn't look like me telling them they're wrong. It looks like, hey, man, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a better way. Your life's going to suck regardless. The difference is the sucking has a purpose or it doesn't. Either way, it's going to be rough down here.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. There's fleeting moments of happiness, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just brutal. So, I don't know. I think it's, and that's the hard thing. The hard part about all of it is that I feel like what God's calling me to do and asking me to do is to say this to people who think they know Him, to the goats. Like, I used to think my mission field was the non-believer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I've always felt the most comfortable. I've always felt like around rough people, I did the best. But I don't believe that anymore. I believe that was my own interpretation of making it easier for me.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe God is like the people who think they know me, which these are the hardest people on earth to argue with, because they're the ones that go, yeah, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Okay, and the hardest thing about it is loving them while you do it and not being a Pharisee.
Mm-hmm.
It's brutal. So I don't know. I think you're involved with this. Obviously, you're editing the videos. I think Daryl is involved with this. And I think God is strategically taking people, specific people, and putting them in place for a reason. And I think it's funny that he started all this when I was 33,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that's hilarious. But I've always considered myself a one-talent servant. And after listening to that sermon I listened to last night, I am not.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why my life is as crazy as it is because I'm a 5-talent servant that just got handed 5 talents. And God said, multiply this. And I've always considered that to be a prideful thing. Like, if you were to say that out loud, you were boastful and prideful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. I don't think that's true. I think there is a level of confidence that a 5-talent servant has to have, and has to operate under the understanding that the responsibility of being handed 5 talents is a big damn deal.
Mm-hmm.
And like, okay, if we're going to do this, like, the dependence upon the king is of extraordinary importance, but we have to go and multiply. And for whatever reason, there's so many people listening to this thing and asking to come speak and all the stuff that I never thought I would do. But there's a reason why, out of nowhere, I had a guy come on the podcast as a guest who wrote a #1 best-selling book about the parable of the talents. You know what I mean? Like, make that make sense.
Right.
Like, and then I randomly choose sermon to listen to on the way to a clinic Saturday morning, and it's on the passage of the sheep and the goats. Like, come on. Like, that's not a coincidence, and then the next one I pick up and listen to is on the parable of the talents. And it's like, this is a thing. Mm-hmm. This is a thing that everyone around me is doing. So, it's scary because it matters. Mm-hmm. And if it didn't matter, then it wouldn't be scary. It's like a business. That's not scary anymore. Right. It used to be really scary, but now it's just like, no, it's money. It'll be fine. God will provide. But anyways, Todd, you got any last quotes of wisdom for the people?
Not off the top of my head. I'm sure if we started talking, I might have a little something, but well, nothing comes to mind.
Man, I sure do appreciate you coming on. And this is my first in-person episode. Should I do this more? Comment below. Yeah. Man, we have a lot of people.
Let me know if you want to do it again.
Yeah, you bet. All right, guys. As usual, Dalton at 310edu is my email address. Email me if you need anything. You can find my number at 310edu.com. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching. Oh, my phone didn't die. Fingers crossed. Oh, yeah, we're golden.
Okay, that's fun.